Hi, welcome back. In the previous video, we have learned about the Hawthorne experiments and the kind of contributions that have been concluded from various studies conducted in that series of experiments. Now, what we have learned in those experiments is that there are other psychological and social factors which make a difference, while we see that in the classical contributions and in the early practices, the focus was much on the orderliness and the economic activities, also the productivity of the workers. While if we look forward in the connection of the Hawthorne studies, so the Hawthorne studies revealed a very important perspective of employee welfare and well-being in addition to their social needs, which are the outcome of the series of the studies conducted in the Hawthorne experiments. In this video, we are going to reflect on certain other contributions that were made in this era by the notable contributors, and what were those kind of movements, what were those kind of contributions that we are going to reflect. Now, if we see that the classical economists have completely ignored the concept of human motivation, that what motivates them to work, and the kind of contributions and the people who were interested as a result of the incumbent studies that were contributed after the classical contributions in the era of management and also the Hawthorne studies. The kind of contributions were being made were focusing on this particular element or a source of production, which is the people's side of organization. Robert Owen, who is a very major contributor to the human relations movement, have admonished factory owners to pay much attention to this resource as compared to the other resources. That was the focus of the earlier contributions. So basically, this principle helped revolutionize theories and practices of management. So the contributions that were being made have really challenged the existing perspective and given new direction to have new assumptions about what people are and how they are contributing to work. If we could just look it in that way, that the investigations in the post-Hawthorne scenario were more towards a deeper understanding of employee motivation. They question about the benefits from the division of labor, that how by dividing a job and having certain clarity on the elements of the job, how the productivity can be enhanced, but not just only the productivity, but also the workers' efficiency and human diseconomies, that how it will help the workers in which they, the manner in which the workers are contributing their efforts, how they can become better by dividing the job. And also there was an interest in obtaining the greater employee commitment to organizational goals through certain kind of participatory supervision, by certain kind of employee participation in workplace decision making. So we could see that the human relation movement passes through two major phases. One of the phase, which is also known as the micro phase, directs our attention towards the behavioral approach. This behavioral approach is multidimensional and interdisciplinary in nature. But under this kind of approach, the knowledge is drawn from behavioral sciences. Now, there are different allied fields which were contributing to the knowledge of the management domain and helping it to become organized in a formal study of discipline. These branches are psychology, sociology, anthropology. So these are basically a way to understand that how the people in an organization are behaving and how organizations should respond with the people. And this kind of understanding could be drawn from various allied disciplines that have helped to make this discipline grow, and the kind of developments that were being made were coming from different dimensions of the work. And it helps to also understand that how the human behavior can be predicted, not just how what they are doing and what the things are happening and how to do it in the real time, but also the different disciplines have helped organizations and the employers to understand and predict the human behavior in an organization, which has really helped in policy making and devising rules for the work. Thus, this approach is also known as the behavioral science approach. In this kind of era, there was an outpour of a behavioral research which focuses on different topics such as group dynamics, decision making, leadership, and motivation. The major contributors that have contributed in this era are Abraham Maslow. He has contributed a very famous motivation theory of a hierarchy of needs, which is very, very popular, and till date there are certain kind of critical appreciations of the theory were being made, and it is tested and tried and validated in different contexts. His theory really made a perspective towards human motivation and how there are different levels of needs within an individual, and how these needs at different point of time affect the behavior of an individual. Another kind of contributions that were being made in this era were from Frederick Herzberg, David McClelland, Douglas McGregor, Clayton L. Duffer, and the other motivation theories who follow these kind of contributions. So we could see a major shift from the focus of employee productivity and the work efficiency to human motivation. The behavior of people started to become the focal point of discussion, and how the behavior could be predicted, how this could be assessed beforehand, so that a kind of a policy making could be done, how the employee behavior could be tackled within the real time. Those kind of situations became important and started to move the direction of the way in which the organizations and the employers used to think the workflow could be. The behavioral scientists made the following propositions. If we could see the organization from a socio-technical perspective, it really changed the perspective of how an organization could be viewed. The social needs of human beings were paid attention to, the kind of understanding that there is importance of people working together, their team spirit, their interpersonal relations, their communication with each other is a very important phenomenon. And if this could be the focus of attention, the way in which the organization's functions is completely changed and shifted its focus from productivity to how the human can be better utilized as a resource in an organization and as an asset to an organization. Individuals differs with regard to their attitudes, perceptions, and the value systems, and consequently they behave differently to different stimuli under different conditions. This is something we could say is a very important perspective to reflect upon, that people are different, and despite of these differences, not just they are different from each other, but they also behave different in a different situation. Like an individual, a same individual will behave in a different situation differently. So it is like, it is not only the inter differences between people, but there is also intra difference within an individual, which is a very important point of reflection to understand human dynamics. People working in organizations have their needs and goals which may differ from the organizational goals, and of course the task of management is to align them together. If the individual goals are different and they are not aligned properly with the organizational goals, it is going to be difficult to create or to develop or to foster the spirit of commitment and loyalty into an individual. Now this is obviously calls for the kind of role of managers that they play while selecting the people. That is why it is important to go back and reflect on the selection of the right man to the right job. So it is like, in the first hand also it is important to understand that what an individual who is coming for recruitment purposes is also suitable for the job. And when you find out that basic work done, obviously it will be easier for the organizations also to align the individual goals with the organizational goals. So it is very important to understand that the right man on the right job must be selected in a most scientific and the righteous way. And that can only be done when the organizations and the employers do understand the importance of the work context in sync with the skills and attributes of the person who will be performing the work at that context. So it's very important to have a combination of both, and only then a synergy can be created. Another thing which is important to focus on here, that the organizations must make certain kind of efforts to create this fusion, and this effort comes only through when an organization also make an effort to understand that how people are behaving and how organizations can respond to that. So having understood the needs of an individual, having understood the way in which individual can behave differently, and using different kind of understanding from the disciplines of psychology and understanding the behavioral perspective of people, it will be a new path to understand that how the organizations can align individual goals with the organizational goals. And also there are various factors that may influence this interpersonal and group behavior. It's not only that people working together will have a kind of a social need fulfilled, but also that what kind of a work philosophy exists in an organization, what communication channels are allowed in an organization metrics, how the organization communication is flowing in an organization, what are the different levels of supervision, and how much control and how much autonomy has been provided in an organization. So the culture of an organization, the kind of philosophy of the people who are establishing policies, and how the people in a group are behaving with each other, all these factors becomes very important to understand when we are talking about the group behavior of people, not just within the group but also in the organization. The other phase of the human relation movement talks about its macro phase, in which the contributions revealed a lot about the perspective of people and the context, that is where the people perform their activities. So this phase witnessed a search for the analytical tools and the conceptual models that explain the interaction between the formal and the informal processes operating within an organization. Now this is where the concept talks about that how an organization allowed the communication to happen. It's not only the formal hierarchy in an organization which is important to which is important for its functioning, but also how the informal channels are formed and how these channels are interacting with each other. Now that provides a space for the social needs to be fulfilled. The results of such kinds of efforts will obviously be providing a groundwork for different developments that were going to happen in this era of the human relation and the behavioral approaches that were being adopted by the employers and organizations. And these kinds of contributions led to the growth of the concept of the organization theory. Now here the focus is more on the organization as a system, where rather portraying just managers as people who are able to make decisions. It is also important to reflect on that there is a certain context, there is a certain limitation, there is certain uh, rationality boundary within which the organization managers have to take decisions. Now this is not only that they will make kind of policies which will help the company to maximize whatever benefits they are expecting, and at the same time they will minimize the cost. In this phase we could see the notable work of Herbert Simon, because he advanced the view that the managers in general, their decisions are bounded by the individual limited mental capacity and their emotions. It is like he stressed on the point that the managers are also human beings and they have their own limited capacity and intellectual capacity to look around a situation and make decisions, while at the same time he also recognized the environmental factors which may affect and on which the individual manager may not have those control. Those environmental factors are the external factors also that we have understood in the previous lectures, that the environmental factors are not in control of any individual or any particular organization. They may change. For example, the political factors, the technological factors, so the rules, regulations in a country, so the political, legal environment, the economic environment, they are out of control of any particular manager or any particular organization. And these factors do affect the decision making of a manager. In case there are limitations related to the resources of an organization, and a manager has to make certain kind of decisions and delegate a task to that limited resource, or you could say the resources which are available do not possess those kinds of abilities which are required to deliver the job. In all of those constrained situations, managers may have to take decisions. So it is not only that his wise attitude is going to solve the problem, but also we have to understand, based on the Simon's arguments, that it is not only the intellectual capacity of a manager that will make a difference, but we also have to understand the bounded rationality within which the manager has to make those decisions, and those rationality boundaries are not all the time in the control of a manager. So we could say that organization perspective is important. The organization theory came into being, that gives us an idea of understanding organizations as a system, and not just as a system, but they are the um, complex systems within which the managers are making decisions in line with the environmental factors which are not in his control. So the contributions of the human relation movement reveal the social and the psychological factors which are important to determine a worker's productivity and the satisfaction. But the movement also shows that the efficient leaders are employee centric, they are democratic, they follow a participative style. Also, the employee motivation is a determining factor in a managerial success. So, through these two phases, we could understand that the contributions of Hawthorne studies were establishing the fact that the social psychological factors are also important, in addition to understand that how the productivity can be improved, and not just by making changes in the work context and the machines that they are using and the effective systems could be established, but also the supervision style and also the philosophy of an organization, and how in an organization the system of informal systems could be established and the channels of communication can be established. All those were also making their place in the field of management, which is shaping the management into a new perspective. The notable perspective that also have arisen in this era to understand is the era of a social person. Now again it is going to stress on the element of the social needs of an individual working in an organization, and because the neoclassical thought focuses more on the human perspective and not just the perspective of their needs, but it is also that the social needs are important. So this era is also to be known as the social person era. The organizations are considered as the social systems which are stimulated by the contributions of Hawthorne studies, and obviously they will continue to grow in this direction only of understanding the social aspect of the people working in an organization. And since organizations themselves are a social systems because it is composed of people and it is dealing with people and it is serving people as customers, as clients, so basically this kind of perspective unfolded different types of issues and problems that have to be understood, and in the light of that there are certain other contributions who are being made, and we cannot neglect the contribution of two important people to understand more about the social person era. These two people have completely changed the way in which the concepts of authority and responsibility in an organization have to be understood, how the efforts in an organization which are being made by different individuals are coordinated because of these kinds of structures, because of these kinds of channels within an organization, and how these channels could be designed and could be established. All of those were important to understand, that whether there are conflicts they can be resolved, whether there are channels of communications, the work flow of interpersonal communication also. Whether there are any kind of conflicts that can be resolved because of these kinds of communication patterns, how the organizations can be designed so that the maximum of the efficiency and effectiveness can be brought in. These two people have contributed immensely on the social needs and social aspects of organization, and this viewpoint have really made their contribution, who have bridged the concepts of the scientific management and the social person era. So we could say that the shift from a classical school of management thought to a neoclassical school of management thought, the contribution of Mary Parker Follett and Chester Bernard are extremely notable to understand that how this shift have actually taken place. So these two people have been credited with the credit of bridging this kind of gap between the concept of productivity and efficiency to understand the social person era and the importance of people in an organization. Let us understand who these people are and how they have contributed to the social person era. Mary Parker Follett was born in Quincy, Massachusetts, and she died in Boston. She was an American author and a sociologist, a pioneer in the study of interpersonal relations and personnel management. Her ideas have drawn from psychology and human relations. We could say that chronologically, Follett belonged to the scientific management era. However, intellectually and philosophically, she contributed to the social person era and the neoclassical thought of management. While when her ideas were being developed, her interest in philosophy and history, because of her interest in psychology, led her to think in patterns and wholes. She used to connect the ideas and the observation that she was observing while working for certain kind of voluntary organizations, and also working in those organizations. She used to observe that there are different type of group dynamics that is important in an organization for teamwork. So it's not only the people who are working, but people who are working as teams. They are creating a certain kind of dynamics, and that dynamics require a kind of a understanding of a group behavior. And this is what we could say that comes from her understanding of the human behavior through the fields of psychology, but also philosophy and history. With those academic opportunities which were limited for women at that point of time, she spent most of her time working with certain kind of voluntary organizations, and she used to provide certain kind of guidance, certain kind of education, certain kind of assistance to those people who are less fortunate. We could say in Boston, the young people, she used to help those young people through certain kind of guidance and help, and where she gained an understanding of the group dynamics. Her major contributions are related to how an organization can be designed in terms of the authority and responsibility, and how different kind of elements are important for supervisory roles and for an organization. Let us look at her major contributions. She stressed the importance of an organization where it is very important for an organization to establish some common goals for its employees. Now again, it stressed back to the point that it is very important that the individual goals in an organization must be aligned with the organizational goals, because if these two are not in sync, it's very difficult for people to motivate them towards a unified direction. Because if you are not interested in a task, it is difficult for anybody to force you, to motivate you, and to guide you or direct you by force or by influence in any way, because the interest will not be matched. That is why the right person in the right job is important, and individual goals must be aligned to the organizational goals. And that can only be done when organizations at the first hand design certain common purposes. Like, the purposes could be designed in a manner in which the people who will join even at the point later of establishment of the organization should be able to contribute to those goals. So those goals must be common, which talks about a little bit of uh, individual interest, which will be good for the society, which will be good for human beings at large, and people in the society, people in different stakes will be served because of the purposes with which the organizations are being established. Also, she thought to think differently about the existing people who were thinking with context of authority and responsibility, because in the earlier times when the organizations were more and the employers were more focused on the productivity, they were less concerned about the relationship aspect of the people working in an organization, and they used to focus more on the hierarchy, the order of the work, the kind of people who are working in different levels of management, and their formal relationship with each other. While if we look at the perspective of Follett, she contributed immensely on the dimension, and she discarded the command style of hierarchy wherein the people were treated like robots and machines. So she focused on the principle of integration, wherein a non-coercive division of power based on its use of power with people rather than power over people. So the philosophy was more of the integration rather than focusing on just directing certain rules and regulations and expecting command and expecting subordination. So this kind of working style of supervisors and subordinates was being discarded by Mary Parker Follett, and she insisted on some kind of a participative style of work in an organization. She strongly advocated ethics, power, and the participative leadership. Herein, she focused on a leader's qualities, a leader's trait, wherein the humanistic perspective of a leader was highlighted. She insisted a lot on the ethical way of a leader to work, that if a leader is demonstrating and a leader is possessing the ethics and morals, he is more able to inspire people, he is more able to influence people in a positive direction, so that people will be more willingly to contribute to the common purposes for which the organizations have been established. She encouraged managers to allow employees to participate in decision making. This will help in enhancing the relationship between the subordinates and employees, and it is like some cordial relationship could be developed between the managers and the subordinates or the employees at the lower level. She also advocated the importance of people more than the techniques. So it is like we could say that she was much ahead of her time, because the people at that point of time in a classical era, and we could say when they were shifting to the Hawthorne studies, this period of time were basically focusing on how the productivity can be enhanced and improved. So the focus was completely on the output. The focus was completely on how better we can make the machines and how better we can define the task so that the people can perform better. But the focus of Mary Parker Follett was completely on a different direction, wherein she was not looking at how the output will be, but she was more focused on the input, that is the human resources in an organization, and she focused too much on people rather than the techniques and the machines in an organization. So her ideas also did not gain much of the attention at that point of time when she was making these points and when she was making these contributions. But of course we see in the contemporary times currently today that her ideas are more celebrated and are more acceptable in the current times as compared to the times when she made these contributions. And much of what the managers do today is fundamentally what Mary Parker Follett established years ago. So she approached management through the human values, through the psychological perspective, and also some kind of collaborative work experience at work. So she focused on the participative style of leadership. She focused on a leadership style which is less authoritarian. The leaders are more ethical. The leaders have more power in terms of delegating tasks and giving more responsibilities in a more cordial and a more convenient manner, in which the individuals themselves are more motivated to work towards the common purposes and achieving those goals of an organization. And she focused on the element of integration of the employer and employee relationship, and not controlling people in an organization just like machines. So her focus was more psychological and more social and more human with the people working in an organization. The other major contribution came from Chester Bernard. Chester Bernard was born in 1886 and died in 1961. He was an American manager, public administrator. He is the author of various books in management theory and organizational studies. He was working basically during the World War II, wherein he contributed his efforts to the United States organization. And for his services during this World War, also he basically was being conferred the Presidential Medal for his outstanding services. During that period and post-war period also, he worked as an advisor to the United Nations Atomic Energy Commission, and he was also the co-author of a report on an international control on nuclear energy. In 1948, he subsequently retired as a presidency of the New Jersey Bell, where he was working as the CEO, and then he, after retiring from that, he served as the president of the Rockefeller Foundation for 4 years. These are certain major contributions that we could say he was making during his lifetime, that he was working with various important agencies, and where he contributed as a policy maker, as a decision maker, and he served the war situations, and he served the organization's philosophy in a manner in which a strategy making, in which an organization has to deal with a critical situation of a wartime period. And during wartime period also, he was serving as a kind of you could say strategy maker and a policy maker in that time, and he served some critical agencies just like the Atomic Energy Commission or a Rockefeller Foundation. So these are agencies, these are organizations with which Bernard has worked, and his sympathy and understanding of employee needs while observing and working with these organizations have really helped to bridge the behavioral school of management with the classical school of thought. So his contribution were more on the side of how organizations should be established and how organizational system could function through those establishments. This is where we could see the major contribution coming from Chester Bernard. Let us look at some of his notable work. He viewed organizations as the cooperative systems which began with individuals as discrete beings. However, the organizations did not function except they are interacting with the human in social relationship. Let us look at some of the contributions of Chester Bernard. In view of Bernard, the organizations are cooperative systems that began with individuals as discrete beings. However, the people did not function except they interact with the other humans in social relationships. So as people could choose whether they would want to enter into a specific cooperative system or not. So it's basically like people work together in an organization and they will speak to people and they will enter into those interpersonal social interactions will on the basis of the will and the choice of people. So the point of focus by Chester Bernard here is that organizations are not just a system, but it is also a cooperative system in which the person's will and choice is important to enter into a communication or not. So Bernard has a view of a system and having the three essential elements that he focused on, that it is the members who are willing to cooperate is very important. Organizations must have a common purpose and the method of communication in an organization which a organization should establish within the system. So these are the three important elements through which he defined the concept of a cooperative system. That it is the responsibility of organizations to allow the channels in an organization wherein the informal communication can flow, which gives an opportunity for people to join a communication network or not, and based on their choice they join this kind of system. And also there has to be certain common purpose for the communications to flow in an organization. So an organization has to provide certain inducements which can be both physical and social to offset the sacrifices that the people made by their virtue of the relationship with the organization. That means by virtue of being an employee of an organization, the kind of efforts people invest into the process of attaining the goals of organization must be induced by certain sort of physical and social resources and facilities by the organization. He introduced the idea of informal organization, in which he referred to the importance of the people who have preferences and choice to come together and create those networks. By informal organization, he meant that the aggregate of the personal context and the interactions and the associated grouping of people. So it is basically all those people collectively known as informal organization, wherein people are not governed by any formal contract or a relationship. It is like people who are working together are employees of an organization, but the informal organization is somewhat groups of people within those formal organizations who are being formed out of choices, out of common preferences, out of common taste, and out of willingness. So it is like not forced by any contract or conditions, but informal organization is a very important phenomenon within any organization. So basically he identified the importance of informal organization and also the informal organization in its shape as an aggregate of those people who wants to come together and communicate together on whatever choices and issues that they want to, which is not governed by any formal terms and conditions. They are without structures, they are basically formed without a kind of a conscious purpose. It's basically an informal group which arose out of people working together, and because they share something common such as attitudes, maybe customs, maybe norms, maybe their choices are similar, on the basis of which these kinds of groups are being formed. So he believed that the informal organization have to have certain kind of situations or have to have certain kind of elements to get established and to function. These are the means of communication. Basically the informal organizations help organizations to increase cohesiveness between the workers, and also they protect the informal group members' personal integrity. and they also protect the informal group members' personal integrity. So the informal organizations are very important, and their functioning and their existence also help the formal organization to carry out their regular activities, because this gives an opportunity for the people who are the members of those informal groups to share their issues and problems, and basically it helps to develop a kind of a bond of trust and likeliness among each other, so that they work together as a common team. Basically, he credited with developing this kind of groups through the acceptance theory of management. So this kind of informal organization within an organization and how these groups are being formed is also because of the concept which collectively being termed as the acceptance theory of management, wherein he emphasized that the willingness of employees to accept the manager's authority is based on their acceptance. The way in which the employees accept the authority led to the contribution of the acceptance theory of management. So Bernard also identified three additional executive functions which are in addition to the responsibilities of the management to establish communication systems. Managers must define individual duties, lines of authorities, and the responsibilities, and also consider both formal and informal means of communication. This kind of executive function will include the recruiting of people who could work together compatibly, as well as in preserving the morale of the team members, provide positive inducements, for example wages. And it's not just only providing positive inducements, but many a times the executives must also remove certain kind of negative inducements also, let us say removing a punishment, or let us say removing a kind of a fine from not performing or performing underperforming situation. So it's basically not just about giving positive inducement, but also removing certain kind of negative elements from the job or kind of situation, and maintaining deterrents such as supervision, control, inspection, training the employees, ensuring that a cooperative system is viable for the existence of the company. So it's not just only the executive function to delegate the task, but he highlighted the importance of making recruitments which are also compatible not just to the job but also to the organizational members in terms of their attributes, in terms of their habits, and also to provide inducements, the right inducements, and also to ensure that what kind of supervision style they are going to adopt, whether they are going to be more participatory in nature or they are going to be more authoritative in nature. So he focused on the participatory style, he focused on the compassion of the managers, he focused on how the managers can improve the motivators by making them more positive, or sometimes if not more positive then at least reducing the negativity from the inducements viewpoint. Another contribution which Bernard focuses on is the moral leadership. Now when we talk about moral leadership, it is about the consciousness of a leader. It talks about the ethical behavior in a leader, which is his beliefs, his feelings of what is right and what is wrong. A manager or a leader must focus and emphasize on his own consciousness of selecting the right and doing the right, and leaving the bad part as well. It's basically a kind of a knowledge and an acknowledgement within a leader, and having those sense and ethics in which a leader is more aware of the right and wrong, and he is more able to demonstrate those skills, so that certain kind of influence can also be developed among the co-members or the employees of an organization. So moral leadership is not just only about the personal responsibility, wherein it focuses on the character of a leader, talks about what he views, what are his choices, what are his abilities, but in addition to his character and the personal responsibility that a leader holds, he also holds certain official responsibilities, which is the way in which he is acting on behalf of organizations. He many a times have to take certain decisions that has to be ethical. He many a times have to forego the manipulation, he have to abide the rules and regulations of an organization, he have to demonstrate those ethical beliefs. What he says, he have to walk the talk. Many a times managers have access to sensitive information. The way in which he is utilizing that information and how he is disseminating the information, the required amount of information to delegate to for the right performance of the employees is essential. So it is like, instead of manipulating those resources to which he has major access because of the virtue of his position in an organization, he must be ethical in his approach. And also, not just personal and not just organizational, he has more commitment towards the stakeholders, which are the other stakeholders in addition to the direct stakeholders such as employees and the organization people and the clients and customers, but also the society at large. He must be more responsive towards the environmental needs, he must be more responsive to the societal needs, that what organization is contributing to the society, the way in which they are designing their objectives, the way in which they are trying to achieve the goals within an organization must take care of the societal concerns as well. So by moral leadership, he does not only focuses on the character of a leader, but he also focuses on his actions and his vision, that it must incorporate the personal, official and the corporate philosophy all together for the betterment of not just the organization but also the people inside and outside the organization. Thus, we could see that Mary Parker Follett and Chester Bernard views have really helped the organizations to shift their focus from productivity to understand the perspective of the people who are contributing and whose productivity we are talking about. So, the human relation perspective of this school of thought and the concern for the social needs and how to establish the organization, also how to view authority and responsibility in an organization, what are the responsibilities of manager. This era have contributed immensely on the dimension of shedding light over the different perspective from the efficiency to the well-being of the worker and to the human side of the worker. And that is why the major thought talks about that not just the factory that you must be concerned with or a system you must be concerned with, but it is also the factory men, that the perspective of the people who are working within an organization and how they are able to meet their social needs, and their social needs are critical in addition to their intellectual and their technical skills. It's very important to understand the shift from a classical theory to a neoclassical theory and the school of thought, that how these are being developed on the human relations, behavioral sciences, and also the importance of understanding the motivation for the individuals to work. So it is not only important that a system should be established with a common purpose, also how the organization allow the informal channels to be established, how the authority and responsibility relation is being designed in an organization, and how the communication will be flown in an organization by taking care of human motivation, by taking care of human social needs, and by also taking care of the amount of power and responsibilities with a combination of the right policies in an organization. All these are the important contributions of the neoclassical era that we have learned in this video. Thank you.